Hi, everyone. Today I have a person that is in a space that I'm familiar with. His name is Axel Strombergsson from Veeva Systems, which is a cloud-based company that focuses on the life sciences industry. And Axel works in the MedTech side of things. So I will let Axel introduce himself and we'll take it from there. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and thanks for having me, Amit. This is really awesome. Well, hi everyone. My name is Axel Strombergsson. Um, as a way of background and experience, I have a background in engineering. I have a master in mechanical, and I started off in the medical device space over 20 years ago. Um, I started my journey back in Sweden, where I'm originally from, where I joined the first medical device startup company, working on product development for a surgical device company. And I was part of that company for about 10 years. And over that period of time, we grew from a small pre-commercial company to about 100 employees with multiple products in commercial distribution, both here in the US and Europe. And as part of the growth of that company, I ended up here in the US. It's going to be 14 years this year. So that was my first journey within a medical device startup company. So following that, I spent a few years at Vanderbilt University in Nashville at the tech transfer office and used my experience in this journey to support research teams on the medical school and also engineering school that were working on various type of medical devices. And Vanderbilt has a lot of research across life sciences, but in the medical device space, a lot of cool things going on over there. So that was a great time for me those years over there. But wanted to get back into industry, and after that, I've been with several other medical device startup companies, going from pre-commercial state to into commercial distribution. So at that time in my career, though, it was more focused on operations and device commercialization. So doing that for about 20 years in industry myself, doing that journey a few times. I'm now, like you mentioned, Amit, with Veeva Systems, specifically on the MedTech division, where we have various software solutions to help medical device companies operate in an efficient manner according to regulations. And specifically, I'm with a team called the QuickVault team. And QuickVault is a product that's specifically built for smaller medtech companies, an EQMS collaboration platform. So if you think about more like a traditional EQMS with doc control, change control, quality events, and other things, but broader in a sense that it spans across an organization in different ways and help early companies be more efficient and thus be able to bring their product to the market faster and then grow commercially from there. So that's what I do, a little bit of my background. Maybe worth mentioning in addition to that, also as part of my career for more than 10 years. In my spare time, even I've been involved in various accelerators and incubators, sharing some knowledge and just supporting founders in different ways. That's a passion of mine to really be involved in the ecosystem, which is also part of my job here at QuickVault, being the vice president for this product. A lot of what I do is community engagement to support the ecosystem in general, and that's also who we are as a company, a partner to the medtech industry, basically.
That's great to hear. That's a very diverse background, especially with you kind of being in that startup environment and that ecosystem for many years. How did that experience kind of help you, I would say, do what you do today? Like what diversity did that give you back then to kind of cascade you forward to now?
Right. No, going through that, with the company that I joined in the early 2000s in Sweden, I didn't have any previous experience with the medical device industry. So of course, when it comes to everything that we need to do to design and develop a device, and then the requirements that you have as a manufacturer, of course, a lot of that I've learned by doing over a couple of decades, right? So in this role, a lot of what I do is when we talk to potential customers and startups in general, is easy for me to align with where they are on the journey and understand where they're going next, and then overlay that in terms of how we can support them in different ways. And being a partner to the industry, which we are in many different ways, in many times the way that I also support startups are introductions of various kinds that doesn't have anything to do with what we do or what I do in my day job. If I talk to a startup that might be interested in what we do, but they're talking about they are struggling with figure out reimbursement within my network, I do have reimbursement experts and I make introductions, right? So I think to going back to your question, having been there myself, several times in different startups in different roles within R&D, within operations, and other things. It's easier for me to align and understand where they are and what they're facing and what challenges they're coming next and how we can support them in different ways, right? So I think that's an advantage. If you've been there, done that, then of course you know what's going on, right? So that's how I use that in this role.
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of in a similar position. I started my career off in a class 2 environment on the R&D side, and then kind of slowly transitioned after a couple of years into the quality regulatory realm. And you can kind of see that why quality is the backbone of really any medtech company, right? Or any life sciences company, honestly, because it revolves around anything that what you really do in terms of operations, design and development, manufacturing, post-market, right? So in terms of your customizable solutions to startups, like how do you guys tackle that? Let's say you have a very small company that's got seed funding and they only need, let's say, design controls, risk management, suppliers. Like that's the first phase of things rather than jumping into manufacturing and post-market because it's not really necessary, right? So how do you guys kind of tackle those type of solutions when you're kind of right sizing based off what a company needs in that respective phase of their development cycle?
Yeah, there's a few different ways we approach that. First off, in terms of what you get within the solution, most of what we have in functionality is catered to pre-commercial state, which if you think about it, right, within an EQMS and especially one like QuickVault, most of our functionality you will actually need during a pre-commercial state. Other few things that you don't need, like managing customer complaints. You don't have a product in the field, but pretty much everything else that we have, managing suppliers, you need to do that early on because as a startup, you may have contract manufacturers. You may work with someone like yourself that helps them on their submission preparation and other things, right? So I'm saying it all to say that what we typically see, even though we sometimes get that questions like, can I just pay for this, that, and the other? In all reality, as a startup, you need most modules, even quality events. You as you build devices, say that you have a physical device of sorts, and you work with your suppliers to provide materials. You may have non-conformances of those parts, and now you have a scar at hand. So I'm saying that all to say that you actually need more of a QMS than a lot of people also think. If you're in design controls, design and development, that actually spans into doc control, change control, like I said, quality events, managing suppliers. You also need to be in compliance with certain aspects of training as well, right? So we don't really, to kind of answer your question in a different way, we don't really parse out the solution. You get the whole thing, which we see that, like I said, is actually needed, even though first-time founders specifically and early stage companies might not think of it from the get-go. But as you get into formal development and as you start building devices and go into DV&V, you will need most of what we have within the system anyways.
Right, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense because, even in early stages of a lot of these, I would say conception devices, like it's important to kind of document, even early stage requirements, right? To put in your design history file, wherever it is. It could be notes, it could be something that's electronic, just having it somewhere just to reference or,
Right.
trace back to something, right? But I guess in that regard, everything's kind of been manual these days or, semi automated, I would say. How does that kind of come into play now with a lot of these quality systems and regulatory processes? Where do you see kind of automation being embedded into these systems or ecosystems to kind of help these early stage companies or later stage companies document things that they probably don't think need to be documented at early stage, but they need to?
Right. There's a few things that come to mind, right? And um, I do sometimes talk to startups that have some sort of a manual system in paper that they manage through Dropbox and other things, and I say, it works, right? But in these modern times, it's like comparing to, you can walk from New York to San Francisco. It's possible, right? You can walk, but it's more efficient to you to take the train or fly, right? So I'm saying that to say it's like today where we are in terms of what modern software solutions that are also very affordable, what they can do for you as a startup. Best practices is really to leveraging something like QuickVault or one of our competitors for that matter. It's like, you know, if I were part of another startup, I would 100% implement an EQMS because it gives you so much efficiency. You're going to save time and also not only save time, but also reduce the risks for your company in terms of documentation gaps and other things. So overall, you can manage things in a traditional manner, and some companies do. But especially if you're a first-time founder and you're not that well versed with regulations, and especially around, we talked about design controls and risk management. If you haven't really done that before, using a modern solution like QuickVault, where we have automated a lot of those regulatory processes, is actually reducing the knowledge need to be in compliance and then moving forward quickly in the proper manner to set you up not only for submission success to get to the market, but also after in post-market, to make sure that you have a solid foundation. So hopefully that answers your question, but just because you can do things in a certain manner in where we are now, where solutions like this are tremendously helpful and increases efficiency, time is money. And if you venture back, it's just how much money you have, right? So why not use tools that make you, even as a small startup, much more efficient and help you move forward quicker? So that, yeah, that's really, I think that's really core to leveraging something like QuickVault.
Yeah, it's and yeah, quality systems, right? Whether it's QuickVault or having a quality system in place, right? It's an investment for the long run. It's an investment not only in terms of, first of all, I think the ultimate investment is protecting patients, right? In a safe and effective manner. And then obviously it also builds the valuation of your company, what you're trying to do. Obviously if you have the coolest idea, whatever it may be, or the coolest product, but you have nothing to back it up, the FDA will come and say, well, if you didn't document it, it never happened. Not just the FDA, any regulatory authority. So talk about your experiences with that, with like startups. They have they get a lot of this traction, they go to market fast, and then, obviously the R word comes, remediation, right? So it's one of these things where you kind of like talk about these projects, because I've worked on a bunch of these remediation projects, and it's just not, it's just, it's going backwards. It's a reactive thinking, not proactive thinking. Same thing with Kappa. Like, it shouldn't be called Kappa. It should be called PACA, right? It should be preventive first, and then there shouldn't be anything corrective technically, right? So it's one of these things where, talk about your experience about, the companies like that kind of rush in ways they shouldn't be rushing, and they're quote unquote cutting corners.
Right. No, what comes to mind, and I think this is what you're talking about, is also most often when it comes to first-time founders, people that haven't done this journey before. And that was same with me. Like I said, when I joined that company in Sweden, I've never been in a medical device company before. I had no idea what the regulations are. And as we were putting our first quality management system, just felt like unnecessary burden, right? And I still see that to this day. Especially with first-time founders, that looking at what are the regulation and what does compliance mean, and having a quality management system to manage your operations, that is just like I felt, a lot of other people that are going to this first time feel that it's a burden, right? And it's just something that you just want to check off and be done with it and just move forward. In reality, though, like you say too, this is about setting your business up for success, right? Because also a lot of the things when it comes to regulations, they're put in place for a good reason. If you talk about design controls has a lot in common with project management best practices. If you look at like PMI, Project Management Institute, and the way that they lay out how you should approach any project, right? So design controls is very, very similar to project management best practice, that you think upfront in terms of what you're going to do, your requirements, the risks that you have in your device, and then you start developing instead of just like rushing forward. And then a year later, you realize that you're on the wrong direction and you've got to get back. And the reason for that, of course, going back to what you said, is for patient safety. FDA and other authorities want us to really think through before we develop a device to make sure it's safe and effective for its intended use, right? To reduce the risk of, field events and customer complaints, basically. So I think that is something I still see, and I think there's more to be done there in terms of education and guidance for early early startups that are first time founders to really like connect the dots between regulations and operating with a proper QMS to your long-term business success as well. Because if you are following design controls, going back to leveraging QuickVault as an example too, you will have less redo. You are more likely to do it right the first time, right? So it is just good business practice to follow regulations, and to your point too, where when we then talk about your submission and you're then getting scrutinized by regulatory authority, if you just write the first time, you're going to have much less risk for any gaps in terms of what you're asking for in terms of documents and data to support your application. And taking that even further, getting like a CE mark or a 510K clearance is just a milestone to your commercial success, which I'll also see a lot still that it's kind of, for all good reasons, startups are very technology focused, right? You want to develop your product, you want to get it to market. But in all reality, getting a clearance or CE mark is just a milestone to your commercial success. And it's now expected, if you talk to investors and others, it's expected that you're going to get your clearance, say. And maybe 30 years ago, some companies got acquired when they got the clearance, but we're way past that. Strategics wait longer and longer and longer, and you need to be commercially successful, even in some cases profitable before you get acquired. But where I'm going with it too is when it comes to startups and being in compliance, when it comes to commercial success and reducing business risk, when you then hopefully get to that exit, which in most cases in the medtech space is acquisition by a larger company, when they do their due diligence, they are going to look beyond your IP and your finances and your R&D pipeline. They will audit your quality management system and all your documentation. And I know this because I know people within M&A at Medtronic and other places too. I had this conversation is that in some cases they walk away from good opportunities because the documentation and the quality management system is too messy. It's too big of a risk for a company like Medtronic to take on a small startup if there are too many red flags. And if they're not walking away from the deal, they will leverage that to reduce acquisition amount. They're going to say it's like, well, you wanted $100 million for your company, but now going through your QMS, we see this, that, and the other. This is too big a risk. We're going to give you $50 million or whatever, right? So I know this was a long explanation, but I think it's important to kind of think about the mentality around being compliance, the mentality around having a quality management system that is not just something to put in place once. It's actually the core and backbone of your company, and it's necessary to have that put in place in the beginning because 5 years from now, if you're in an acquisition scenario, they will scrutinize that and go in and look at that, and they're going to use that against you in the future. So
yeah. How about your experience with, I know you're a big proponent of this, really talking to end users at an early stage, right? So you spoke about commercial success. Obviously, they are your potential customers. They are the people you should be talking to, whether they're doctors, healthcare professionals, nurses, technicians, patients, right? Human beings that are going to be using it, like COVID tests. Usability is a big part of it. So, you can design the best product in the world, right? But the way humans use it, or human psychology as well too, that's why we have all these kind of issues with off-label uses and the purview is different. But how does that kind of tie into what you're talking about with kind of setting the stage with not only the quality system, but also leveraging what you're learning from the doctors or the people that are going to be using it in terms of the healthcare system?
Yeah, no, and if you look at reasons why startups fail, and this is of course also outside just the medical device space, I think this goes across all different type of innovations and technologies like consumer products, what have you. But one area where there's a pattern why startups fail is because they have skipped in-depth customer discovery early on, right? When you're in the prototype phase and start to kind of figuring out exactly what the product needs to look like, not only to work as intended, like you talk about, say physicians, say that it's a tool for physicians or a surgeon, of course, understanding how they would use it, if they would use it, and how that fits into their workflow. But it goes beyond that when it comes to medical devices. in terms of who's going to pay for it, right? That's also part of customer discovery. So not only the technical side of things, you at that early stage in customer discovery, in prototyping, way before you go into formal development, you need to have the foresight to think what you're going to also for the considerations when you're in the market. Here in the US, reimbursement is a huge piece of how devices are paid for, right? So how is the device going to be paid for, by whom? And this is also an issue I see many times when it comes to that early stage. I think startups in general do a pretty good job working or talking to the end user. Say in this example, a surgical device, to talk to surgeons and get some feedback and insight. Um, the thing is with medical devices, like I said, in terms of how they are gonna get paid for, in many cases with medical devices, the person who's going to pay for the device is a different person to the one's going to use it, right?
Right.
So in reimbursement, it's going to be reimbursed for. That's that's CMS or private payers altogether. But also, if say that you have a capital piece of equipment, say a robotic surgery system, and you sell that directly as a capital investment to a hospital system, and you go through the value analysis committee, the VAC, those are things that you also need to consider initially. Okay, well, who are those stakeholders? What are they looking for? What type of metrics are they looking for? Because you can make a surgeon very, very excited about your surgical system. There's a new shiny object, and they might be able to do things they haven't been able to before. But some of the people who are in the purchasing decision can be completely disconnected for that, and they may look at completely different numbers. They might look at things like, oh, can we squeeze in 2 more patients a day to make our surgical department more profitable? Or so that going back to commercial success and really thinking through during customer discovery all different type of stakeholders that will be touching your device once you are in commercial distribution. That is one big area why some startup fail, because they don't do enough of that, and also don't go broadly enough. Like I said, very, very focused on the usability, but then miss the whole economic side of things, right? So I think that's something to be mentioned. There is you may be familiar, but NIH, they have a program called the I-Core program, which I think is about 10 weeks, something of that nature. But it's for academics that have ideas that can be commercialized, and you use that program. You go through like 10 or 12 weeks. So you're a team, and you're on site a couple of times, and then you do a lot of work. But I'm mentioning that because it's part, at least might have changed, because this was a while since I was involved in that. But they have during that 10 or 12 week time period, you need to have a minimum of 100 interviews of stakeholders as part of customer discovery. So that's how so think about it. If you're a startup and you're listening to this, and you kind of think about what you have done thus far for your device, how many documented interviews have you had thus far, right? And who are have you done like a stakeholder map? Like I said, the user, the payer, maybe you have a service part of it too, maybe an IT department that's going to be, have you interviewed everybody that's going to touch or be involved in your device once it's in commercial distribution? You need that stakeholder map, and you need to do enough interviews with all those stakeholders before you commit to formal development. But that's just an example. 100 interviews is a minimum in the NIH I-Core program.
Got it. No, it's definitely good to know. And from your experience and just your opinion, like where in like the MedTech space or even life sciences space right now, generally speaking, as a broader view, like in terms of the technology that we're kind of getting from like AI, augmented reality, machine learning, where do you see the most growth, or the most, I would say, disruption / growth in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years?
Yeah. So I'm gonna stick to the medical device industry, because that's what I know when it comes to pharma biologics. I'm not as familiar, so I'm just going to speak from what I know now, where I see some of the disruption happening in the medical device industry. And you probably know this, but the fastest growing area in the medical device space is digital health, just like you mentioned with AI and machine learning and other things. Some part of that disruption, which I'm really excited about, are technologies that can predict disease states as opposed to just treating disease states. If you look at what we have done as a mankind in terms of, as long as treating any condition, as long as we're going back to the Egyptians using honey to treat wounds and other things, we have always been very focused on treating diseases that are inexistent, meaning someone is sick in one shape or form and they need treatment. Most of our technologies across the life sciences is focused on that. You have diabetes, you get an insulin pump. So where this is going is, which is really exciting with AI, is the introduction of possibility to predict future disease states and do things today to prevent a disease state maybe 10 years from now. And I think that really, it's kind of funny. I think about 20 something years ago, I read an article about sort of the utopia in the future of being able to prevent disease states to begin with. And this sort of was more like a science fiction article, but it has some substance to it. And it's basically having like nanobots inside your bloodstream. Say that you have 100,000 bots or 1 million nanobots always circulating in your bloodstream, and they have the possibility to diagnose various type of biomarkers in your body, or if they run into a cancer cell, to autonomously destroy that mutated cell or whatever. So of course that's like, I think that mankind will get there. It might be 100 years out, who knows, but I think that's sort of like the utopia, right? That we can individual for each person determine possible disease states in the future, and then in different ways prevent that from even happening in the first place, right? And that, going back to where we see some disruption now, and it's happening as we speak. AI in radiology is doing that right now. There's a company called Guide AI. They're in the cardiovascular space, and they are able to see biomarkers in radiology to prevent future disease states in cardiovascular diseases, right? And that's not something that even like a very, very experienced clinician can do, because it's seeing those patterns and understanding that, okay, this type of pattern can translate to a disease state years out. That is the disruption that we are seeing right now, and that makes me really excited, right? Because at the end of the day, that is what we want to do as as a society, or people working in the medtech space. If we can, the technologies that we put in the market, if they are focusing on preventing disease states, everybody wins, right? People less sick, less money spent on treating, sick patients, and the quality of life for humanity is just going to be higher.
Yeah. I mean, I think personalized medicine is going to get more personal over the years, and obviously, like every human being that's ever been created is different from one another, right? In terms of genetics, it's literally impossible to be the exact same genetic makeup as someone else. So that means that everyone's problems are going to be different as a function,
Exactly.
right? So
Right.
when that happens, that comes to that point, it's going to be, we're getting to that point, but it'll get more optimized over time, and I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. But I guess to kind of cap off our conversation, and to really kind of give a take-home message to a lot of like early stage startups, companies that are kind of spinning out of universities, not only in the U.S. but around the world. Why invest in a quality system, or why invest in quality and regulatory at the earliest stage? And from your experience, and I know we kind of spoke about this, but cap it off with that.
Okay. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to some of what I talked about before. Do it right the first time. Build infrastructure for your business. It's like an investment for you in the long run, and will set you up for various types of successes, not only with a submission and get that clearance or whatever, but also, like we talked about, as you do that transition from an early R&D startup, becoming a medical device manufacturer with post-market responsibilities, having that set up from the beginning, and as the infrastructure with the company is just highly beneficial, and a lot of efficiencies gained to that. Something I also do need to stress with that is that, just using a software solution like QuickVault and having a QMS is not like a magic bullet. The importance here is, of course, also get the training and support to really understand how you need to operate. So there's a lot of good companies out there that provide support to startups in terms of education and training, but also implementation of QMS to make sure it's set up well for a specific company with a specific device. But in general, this is the world that we live in. If you want to play in the medical device industry, this is what it is, right? And I think the sooner as a startup founder that you realize that and just get on that train, acquire the appropriate knowledge and learn, because talking back to myself when I joined the first company, it was a huge learning curve. And actually had really poor resources back in Sweden in terms of understanding what we needed to do, right? I can read the regulations, but it was no practical guidance. That's kind of changed. A lot of companies out there that provide good training, good education, and also third-party service providers like yourselves that can be like a fractional team member, that someone that has the experience to kind of guide a team and then also learn by doing and other things from that nature. So I think that's really important. Something to mention there too is if you are an early startup and you want to be successful, a lot of accelerators and incubators also provide that type of support, right? A lot of their mentors are former founders, people that are regulatory experts and what have you. But just seek out various type of resources, get that help to acquire the knowledge that is needed, and then put a QMS in place at the right time to then support you through development, submission, but also going into commercial distribution and beyond.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for your great insights today regarding MedTech quality, regulatory, venture capital, and just creating companies and really kind of promoting safety and efficacy of human beings in our space. So appreciate your time, and look forward to connecting in the future.
No, it was great chatting. Thanks, Amit.
Bye, Axel.
Bye.